Welcome to Story Spark, your ultimate destination for enchanting tales, fables, and life lessons. Dive into captivating stories for adults and others that teach important morals and inspire positive thinking. From classic animal fables to inspiring life lessons, our animated and narrated stories make learning fun and memorable. Subscribe for new moral stories every week and spark your imagination with every tale.
A great, powerful storm had struck the coast during the night, churning the dark, unforgiving waters and sending massive waves surging far beyond the usual high water mark. Now, as the pale, exhausted sun finally rose, it revealed a devastating scene along the vast, sweeping expanse of the shoreline. The receding tide had stranded tens of thousands of crimson and orange starfish, leaving them scattered across the damp, cooling sand like discarded jewels. They lay motionless and dying, baking rapidly under the sun's increasingly intense glare. The silence of the morning was heavy, broken only by the mournful cry of distant gulls. Elias, an old fisherman whose weathered eyes had witnessed countless natural tragedies, walked slowly along the immense beach. He carried a basket for driftwood, his posture rigid with the acceptance of nature's brutal, inevitable cycles. He knew the scale of the destruction was simply too immense to even contemplate addressing. The beach stretched for miles in both directions, and the sheer number of stranded creatures was utterly overwhelming. To him, the catastrophe was a mathematical certainty, a disaster that was far beyond the scope of any single person's effort. He simply lowered his gaze to the ground, focusing only on the useful logs at his feet, determined not to look directly at the endless, impossible sea of dying stars surrounding him. He concluded that some problems, due to their sheer magnitude, must be endured rather than attempted. His walk was a meditation on futility, a slow surrender to the grand, uncompromising forces of the powerful ocean. He decided the immense task of saving them was too much for any one soul to bear, and he continued his grim, solitary search for usable wood without delay. Suddenly, a bright splash of movement far ahead momentarily broke Elias's bleak, predetermined rhythm. He lifted his old eyes and saw a small, thin figure moving quickly and deliberately amidst the chaos. It was Finn, a boy no older than 10, whose slight frame seemed impossibly small against the backdrop of the desolate, endless shoreline. Finn was engaged in a very simple, repetitive action. He would stoop down swiftly, gently pick up a single dry starfish, rush purposefully to the water's edge, and then, with a brief, hopeful motion, toss the small creature back into the cool, life-saving waves. He did not hesitate, he did not look up, and he did not glance at the thousands of other dying starfish around him. He simply repeated his solitary task again and again, with a focused, almost meditative intensity. Elias watched the boy for a long moment, completely mesmerized by the sheer, impractical dedication of the simple ritual. The distance between the boy's isolated spot and the fisherman's position seemed to visually magnify the immense futility of the action. For every one starfish Finn managed to save, the sun claimed 100 more. The waves continued their rhythmic, indifferent roar, seeming to mock the boy's tiny, tireless, singular effort. It was a beautiful, yet utterly meaningless endeavor, in the fisherman's experienced view. Elias felt a complicated mixture of pity and frustration for the boy's naive, misguided optimism, and he felt compelled to intervene, to inject a dose of necessary, pragmatic reality into the boy's impossible task. He changed his course immediately, walking quickly toward the small, determined figure. Elias finally reached the area where the boy was working, his heavy, worn boots crunching loudly on the shell-strewn sand. He paused, watching Finn deftly scoop up a large, bright orange starfish that was curled tightly and already fading. "Son," Elias called out, his voice rough and slightly weary from years of yelling over the ocean's noise. The boy looked up, his brow furrowed with deep concentration, his young eyes wide and earnest beneath his mop of damp, sandy hair. The rescued starfish, still wet from the sea, lay safely cradled in his small palm. "What are you doing here?" Elias asked, trying to keep the skeptical edge out of his voice, though it was a fruitless effort. "Don't you see the futility of this task? Look around you, boy. The whole beach is covered in them. There are thousands, tens of thousands of these poor creatures stranded here, dying rapidly under this intense sun. You could work tirelessly for 100 years, rushing up and down this beach without rest, and you still wouldn't make the slightest, most measurable difference to the immense total. You're simply wasting your finite time and valuable energy. This entire beach is a lost cause, a tragedy that is too vast for human intervention." Elias swept his arm in a grand, frustrated arc, indicating the endless expanse of the beach, hoping to make the boy fully grasp the overwhelming, undeniable scale of the terrible problem, and immediately cease his impractical efforts. The boy simply looked back at the old man, his thoughtful expression unchanging.
Finn slowly tightened his small grip around the warm, dry starfish, turning his attention back to the suffering creature. He took a single, deliberate step toward the waiting water, his small feet sinking slightly in the damp sand. He didn't offer a direct, combative argument against the old man's harsh, undeniable logic, nor did he attempt to debate the sheer impossibility of saving every single starfish. Instead, he stopped precisely at the fringe of the foaming sea, turned back to look directly into Elias's cynical eyes, and then, with a graceful, simple, underhand toss, he sent the starfish spinning back into the cool, dark waves. The creature immediately uncurled, seemingly grasping the water in a desperate final embrace, and swam swiftly away toward the deeper, protective ocean currents. The small, successful action was an eloquent, living response to the fisherman's cold practicality. Then Finn stooped down to collect another stranded starfish, his gaze unwavering as he spoke to the older man. "You are completely right, sir," he admitted softly, his voice clear and unexpectedly strong. "I know I can't save them all, and I know my effort won't change the outcome for the entire beach. My work is infinitesimal compared to the total number." He held up the newly rescued starfish, its body still radiating the sun's intense heat. "But," Finn concluded, a quiet, powerful conviction in his voice, "I made a profound, eternal difference to this one."
Elias stood motionless for a long time, the boy's simple, unexpected declaration echoing loudly in the absolute silence between the waves. He watched Finn move away quickly, already focused on the next endangered creature. The fisherman had anticipated an emotional outburst, a tearful surrender, or perhaps a futile attempt at rational defense, but he certainly hadn't expected such calm, irrefutable clarity. The boy's words were a simple pinprick, yet they managed to deflate the massive, rigid balloon of Elias's ingrained cynicism and vast, lifelong experience.
he found himself looking not at the overwhelming total of tens of thousands, but solely at the specific area where the boy was now diligently working. He saw the rapidly growing, noticeable line of small, empty spaces in the sand, a clear, narrow trail of life, where moments before there had been death. Elias shook his tired head firmly, attempting to dislodge the boy's unexpected influence, and resumed his slow search for driftwood. The sun climbed higher, the air grew heavy, and the silence seemed to press down on him. But now the image of that small starfish uncurling and swimming away safely in the water stubbornly refused to leave his mind. The pragmatic, logical futility of the effort remained, yet the profound, absolute success of the individual act became a powerful, undeniable argument against his hardened worldview.
The fisherman walked for another full hour, his basket steadily filling with useful, solid pieces of weathered wood. Yet his mind was constantly distracted, turning over the boy's simple, powerful statement like a smooth, unfamiliar stone. He calculated the boy's pace, perhaps 20 saved starfish every 10 minutes. Over the course of the morning, Finn had likely rescued several hundred creatures, a negligible figure against the massive population on the entire beach, but a profound miracle for those specific individuals. Elias stopped again, looking back down the long stretch of sand he had already covered. He could clearly see the boy still working diligently in the distance, his movements now slow but still constant, never once pausing for rest or succumbing to the heat. Elias realized that his own initial reaction had been rooted in a fundamental misinterpretation of the task. He had viewed the problem as a statistical challenge, a numerical equation that needed a comprehensive, massive solution. Finn, however, saw it as a moral imperative, a collection of single, immediate crises demanding individual, focused attention. The boy was not trying to solve the beach's problem. He was simply eliminating the problem for every starfish he could manage to reach. Elias suddenly felt a wave of deep, stinging shame that he, an adult with strength and time, had allowed his pride and cynical view of the world's scale to paralyze him into complete, passive inaction against such a clear, immediate evil.
Elias quickly dropped his heavy basket of collected driftwood right there on the damp sand, the sudden clatter seeming shockingly loud in the quiet morning. He stood completely still, watching a nearby starfish, its 5 arms slowly beginning to curl inward as the dry air desiccated its delicate skin. The creature was small, insignificant, and completely helpless. Elias suddenly felt a powerful, undeniable conviction. The boy was completely right. The magnitude of the world's suffering was absolutely no excuse for total indifference or calculated neglect. Failure to help everyone was certainly not a license to help no one at all. With a deep, decisive sigh that finally released years of pent-up resignation, Elias knelt slowly, his old knees protesting the sudden, unaccustomed effort. He gently picked up the small, dying creature. Its skin felt dry and rough, but still held a faint, residual warmth. It was the first starfish he had touched that morning, and in the act of holding it, he felt a strange, immediate connection to its struggle. He then rushed toward the water, his pace now mirroring the quick, determined stride of the boy he had just criticized. He paused at the water's edge, offered a whispered, heartfelt apology to the starfish for his delay, and tossed the creature far out into the cool, dark surf, watching with a completely new fascination as it instantly vanished into the welcoming, life-giving depths.
He turned back, his resolve now firm and clear, and began walking quickly down the beach to join the young, tireless worker.
When Elias finally reached Finn, the boy looked up, his face streaked with sweat and sand, and offered the old man a small, completely understanding smile that required no explanation. Without exchanging a single word, the two of them began to work side by side, their rhythm quickly synchronizing into a steady, efficient pattern. Elias's larger hands and longer reach instantly doubled their combined successful output. They were a perfect pair. The boy's youthful idealism, now powered by the old man's renewed strength and vast stamina. As the sun reached its oppressive zenith, several other people from the small nearby village, drawn by curiosity and then profoundly moved by the sight of the old fisherman and the young boy working tirelessly together, began to walk down to the beach. They joined the pair, slowly at first, and then with a growing sense of shared, determined purpose. Soon, dozens of hands were actively engaged in the task. The collective effort, once seen as entirely futile, began to make a genuine, visible, substantial difference. The entire area they worked on was completely cleared of stranded starfish, a living testament to the fact that one small action, driven by compassion rather than statistics, possesses the true power to inspire a collective effort that can dramatically change the world one single life at a time.